Nazis. Jews, especially in Eastern Europe and pre-revolutionary Russia, were targets of violent pogroms. This situation changed after the socialist revolution in the Soviet Union, but the conditions for Jews in pre-revolutionary Russia and in Eastern Europe was not dissimilar from the kind of terror that black people faced in the rural post-slavery South. But among Jews in Europe and around the world, there were essentially two trends with two different views on how to respond to anti-Semitism. Many Jews were aligned with radical, socialist, anarchist, or communist movements and saw their oppression in light of, and as a component of, the struggle against all oppression and exploitation. At the same time, the other main trend among Jews viewed the solution to the oppression of Jewish people in establishing a Jewish state in what was, after World War I, British-occupied Palestine. Explicit in the Zionist outlook and agenda was that this Jewish state would serve the interests of the colonial powers. Zionist leader Theodor Herzl put it this way: England, with her possessions in Asia, should be most interested in Zionism. I believe in England that the idea of Zionism, which is a colonial idea, should be easily understood. After World War II, the British sponsored the Zionist project on a large scale and enabled Jewish immigration to Palestine while turning their backs on massacres carried out by Zionist gangs like the Irgun to establish Israel on the basis of ethnic cleansing. Others have spoken to this, and it's documented in the packet of reprints from Revolution available here tonight. By the late 1960s, the United States replaced Britain as the main financial, political, and military sponsor of Israel. What did that relationship bring to the world? Throughout the Cold War, Israel was a bulwark in America's contention with the Soviet Union in the Middle East. During that period, Israel provided large-scale strategic military assistance to U.S. allies, not just in the region, but also to the Shah of Iran, to the death squads of the Christian fundamentalist regime of Rios Mott that systematically killed off entire villages of indigenous peasants in Guatemala. And Israel provided assistance to the Nicaraguan Contras, who carried out attacks on civilians and civilian infrastructure to overthrow the elected government of Nicaragua. The establishment of Israel has been a disaster for the Palestinian people, and beyond that, a key prop in a world of pain and poverty that we live in today. But it also came at a terrible moral cost for the Jewish people who, forgive the biblical reference, accepted a mess of pottage in exchange for their souls and consciences. And as part of what we are doing, we need to put that challenge to people very sharply in the spirit of the quote that I read from Avakian. Let's tell it like it is. Jewish people were enlisted to set up an illegitimate settler outpost in the service of imperialism, and their persecution in Europe was used without any moral or logical justification to legitimize that. Finally, I want to very briefly identify and speak to one other factor that keeps people from protesting the current massacre in Gaza with the kind of passion and commitment that is demanded. People raise that Hamas and Islamic fundamentalism more generally are not an enlightened progressive force, and that the conflict with Hamas involves an aspect of a proxy war with Iran, which itself is a reactionary Islamic theocracy. This is true and it's explored in articles in Revolution newspaper, but two things must be said here. First, between these two reactionary forces, it is the United States that has brought far, far more suffering to the people of the world. And second, these Islamic fundamentalist forces would be largely dormant if it were not for the so-called war on terror, which is in reality aimed at tearing up the fabric of the Middle East and radically restructuring it in the interest of U.S. empire. Not want to see the choices of the people of the world confined to picking between U.S. imperialism on the one hand or Islamic fundamentalism on the other hand, then you have to, right here and now in the United States, oppose your own side of this deadly equation. The more we do so, the more the people of the world see that there are people in this country who are not going along with the crimes of our government, as it sponsors Israel's massacre in Gaza, the more basis there is for the people of the world to see the potential for another way. A really liberating, radical, revolutionary way to get beyond a world divided into oppressed and oppressors and all that goes with that. There is a challenge to everyone in this country to be part of the struggle to bring forward another way, a force in the world, including in this country, that does not look at the world from the perspective of Americans, but instead starts from and struggles for the interests of humanity. Enough already. Enough already with the outlook of me and my people first above everyone else, especially when that outlook is being invoked to align people with terrible crimes. Right now, right here, what is required from all of us is passionate and committed struggle against Israel's massacre in Gaza and condemnation of the U.S. role in these war crimes. And there is a challenge to not just act, but to follow the logic of your convictions, to struggle to understand the root causes behind Israel's massacre in Gaza and the U.S. role in this. And there is a challenge to learn more, to go where that takes you, including grappling seriously with what it is really going to take to bring about a whole better world.